We're going to talk about some lessons that we've learned here at Robin. I'm going to do my best not to market to you. If you're looking to find us, it's actually robin.io, where we've got a number of additional collateral to talk about this in greater detail. Very quickly, if you're not familiar with Robin, we make enhanced Kubernetes platforms. We make orchestration from bare metal to services and application-aware cloud storage. Probably our most notable customer, someone else mentioned, is Rakuten Mobile. We have a number of partners. I just want to make sure that, I'm not speaking on behalf of Rakuten. I'm speaking on behalf of Robin. But with Rakuten, we delivered completely containerized services end-to-end from an Open RAN, a MEC framework, and a 5G core solution as part of the Rakuten Communications platform. And we also put together a bunch of 4G LTE type of applications as well for them. So let's get going here. I'm going to start off with a couple things that are a little more obvious and work myself down to, let's say, the more tedious or detailed type of solutions. So when I look at, not just what I've been doing with Robin, but also when I've worked for systems integrators in the past and on systems integration teams, it's remembering that it's all connected. So, one of the things that I want to talk about is we tend to focus, or a lot of people tend to ask questions about those top two solutions. They're focused on just getting connectivity up and running. But I think a big thing to remember in what the internet has taught us, that there's an incredible amount of money in the services that run over the top of them. So we don't want to just focus on connectivity at the expense of not thinking about how that's going to impact the services that we can actually use in the future. One great example of a new horizon is MEC. So we're going to have platforms at the edge delivering different various services. Another one that I think is going to be very important is actually private 5G. So, well, you know what? I'm an operator. That's really not my thing. My personal opinion is I think we will see with 5G a proliferation of private mobile solutions out there. And if you can put together a 5G core, and last time I checked and I gave some 5G training to my own team, there's about 20 different network functions in just the core alone. If you can manage that, or even most of those, deploying private should be much easier. There are a lot of companies that have all of this in a box. It's down to 4 network functions. And there are many, many, many different deployment models that we discuss actually in a white paper, where a lot of them, I believe, will end up being hybrid, where, again, you can make money. So, one of the questions I like to say is, someone said to me once, it's like, do you want to make money or do you want to make a lot of money? So, fortunately, I haven't overly capitalized on the last one. But again, focus on a future with services as well. And if you go to robin.io and you go to our solutions tab, we have connections to white paper, solutions briefs, and data sheets for all of these solutions. But of course, we're focusing on Open RAN today. Even more obvious is don't wait. So this stuff is out there and running today. There are a lot of open solutions. There are a lot of parts of the solutions as you put together the pieces that are well defined, even if all of the standards aren't perfectly defined yet. If you're waiting, you're missing out. And like I said, do you want to make money or do you want to make a lot of money? So let's take a look at those services when you build, because that's how you really leverage, and that's how you're going to distinguish yourself between yourself and another operator. As we start to dig a little deeper, also very important is you're going to find out, if you don't know yet, everybody needs to be an integrator. Now, this doesn't mean you want to get rid of your SI team or your systems integration partner, but even though I work for an integrator in the old days, a lot of expertise is still needed from your vendors. If you have a hardware platform, everybody talks about how they have a Redfish API, but they're all different. Cloud platforms, again, many customers or many vendors do things in different ways. When you talk to your NF vendors, many of those NFs that just for the Open RAN piece will have very, very specific network setups, tunings, affinity, and anti-affinity rules. And again, do not forget your operations tools, because if you take a look at whatever you've got today, if we believe that 5G is successful, it will hold you back tomorrow because it is not ready. We need to find new paradigms and bring forward existing paradigms to get there to work. One of those things I think about when we think about putting it all together is, how do I onboard lifecycle operations? We think of them as with easy words like stop, start, move, migrate, delete, clone. But when you look at any application, that's very, very complex under the covers. It's not like you're doing this on your own PC. Highly involved. So look for people that actually have proven solutions. Take a look and see who their ecosystems partners are. Talk to them about the open interfaces that will be used, and find a way that you can take existing paradigms, and I like to use the example as Helm charts, and you can uplift them into a solution that works a lot better. Love Helm charts. Everybody's got Helm charts, but you don't want to be in the business of writing Helm chart after Helm chart after Helm chart, or you will not be able to make that successful jump to 5G. But you should be at least to start with Helm charts, use them to onboard life cycles. Sorry, I have a pop-up there. All right, next slide. Remember that your timelines are not necessarily the timelines of your vendor. And an example that I like to use is virtual machines and containers. When we're talking about ORAN, we're talking about coexisting with things at the edge of the network. We're going to need a lot of performance tuning, etc. There are a bunch of ways to do that, but we need to remember that at the edge, your resources are limited. The time it's going to take you to add more resources, it's going to take a lot longer, or simply maybe you won't be able to do it. So when you're looking at cloud platforms, and I realize that's a grain of salt because we make cloud platforms, you want to look at how efficiently does it let me coexist the old with the new? Do I have a rack of type A with one platform, one set of operations model, a rack of B, a rack of C? Or how do I harmonize these and put them all together so I can share workflows? So I don't just eliminate resource silos, but again, more importantly is I don't generate a whole bunch of operations silos. And how we do that is we need to start asking people how and why. When I look at things from analysts, when I look at RFPs, RFIs that I've either worked on or answered, and I look at websites, there's a lot of focus on ticking the checkboxes, right? A lot of focus on ticking the checkboxes. So some of the questions you can say is, how does this really reduce my life cycle tasks? How well do I automate it? What did you do and why did you do it? And, I pick on NUMA in this use case. There's a number of things, but you want to make sure there's no hard coding. If you're hard coding things, it's not automated. I mean, for instance, I have an example of a device with 2 NUMA nodes on the top. If I have to go through each one of those things and pick them manually, it takes me a long time. If I want to do it across all of those different clusters that I have down there, it's going to take forever. And I can guarantee you that there's going to be human error there. What happens when something goes down? What happens when it changes? Did you have to hard code even more and more backups, more and more backup configures, Helm charts, when you don't even know what's going to fail? You need to find a way, or we need to work with a tool that says, what? I'm going to allow you to model things. I'm not going to ask you to hard code everything. I'm going to tell you what you want. And I want to make it look like my service. I don't want to make it look like Kubernetes or a cloud platform, because we can't afford to have all of them. And when we look at something like NUMA and we talk about awareness, it's just a checkbox. But what we really need, not like just a standard says, you need better plugins, and you need to look all the way down to an individual NUMA node on an individual server instead of grouping things in, Kubernetes worker nodes. So in a Kubernetes worker nodes, I can have a number of pods that run a number of applications. And if I only have granularity into that worker node, well, you know what? When I get out to the edge where things are scarce, it's going to become increasingly difficult to shuffle those things around and find place. And it's going to take a lot of work rather than being done in minutes. It can take hours or days to figure that out. The analogy I like to use is, let's say you have a garage. If you view your garage as a 2-dimensional plane, you can say, I can park my car here, I can put some boxes there, and that's about it. It's not very efficient because in your garage, you may have layers of boxes. You may have a toolbox that even has shelves, and you can cram a lot more stuff in there because you have a high granularity of awareness as to how you can pack things into your garage. Where if you looked at a blueprint, it really doesn't tell you much. So when it gets to things like NUMA and any number of things that will give you flexibility in how you deploy, how quickly you deploy, where you deploy, we want to ask the questions how and why. We don't want to ask our vendors to just check a box and say you do it. Many, many ways, even within the standards, to skin a cat. Checking my time on my phone here. All right. Next is, we're very, very focused. I see people, when we talk about virtual RAN, open RAN, is we got to make sure the protocols work. Yep, absolutely we do, right? Or otherwise nothing runs. But again, it's operational interoperability that is key as well. So, as you are doing this, I always recommend to people, and I still see people kind of pocking after they selected people. I'm a big believer in bake-offs, trying multiple things before you buy it. And it gets back to the previous statement, understand how things work. And you want to be looking at things that reduce the amount of human interaction. You want to look at things that span multiple domains and reduce the number of workflows. And by that, I mean you can have bare metal management, you can have management of a cloud-native cluster, you can have manage of a network function or services and any number of things. Well, again, those are all operational silos unless you find a way to put those in unified context-aware workflows that doesn't require somebody sitting around waiting for a red light to go on or a green light and pop something. Next, absolutely positively plan for multi-tenancy. If you want to make a whole lot of money, there's a lot to do with services. And since we're talking about ORAN today, we're talking about the edge. And not everybody and their mother is going to have their own edge data center. They're going to look to buddy up with somebody. I mean, this has been around for over a decade in content delivery. So plan for multi-tenancy. Make sure that you have something that does everything you need. Of course, you need general multi-tenancy. You need highly granular roles. And not only do you need granular roles, you need those across your different domains. For example, across your hardware domain, your virtualization or cloud platform domain, your function domain. There could be many, many of these different domains. And how are you going to manage that? If you continue to work with in a siloed way, where you have a hardware team, you have a platform team, you have a function team, you have an operations team, managing that becomes very, very difficult. And I wish I underlined the next thing in one of those bullets is observability. So how do you observe that and really troubleshoot that in a multi-tenant environment? Because the people that you're hosting or the people in the organization need to know there are a million ways a service can fail. Do I have a node that's down? Is there not a connectivity in the network? Do I have an issue with my cluster not responding? Is there something within the cluster that's not connected? Did I misconfigure a network function so it has ridiculous jitter and latency that's causing me a lot of problems? How do I correlate that? And you're looking for something that even on a per tenant, per role base says, I'm going to wrap all of that up, that whole layer, bare metal to services, and I'm going to serve it up to you. Otherwise, you are taking tons of logs from tons of services. You're trying to find out how they correlate together. Now you're also trying to do it in a multi-customer, multi-tenant environment. That is a huge endeavor that people cannot do. So again, when you're looking at multi-tenancy, what are the things that customers want to do, your potential people you're hosting inside or out, and how do you reduce those operations? Because while we all like to get data, we don't want to have a money pit, a money sink in terms of a team that all they do is scrape all this data and I pay all this money for this AI. You need to find an easier way to do it. Second to last slide. How easy is it? Do you have to be an expert? And an example that I like to use is because a lot of this stuff for CloudNative is running on Kubernetes. How many Kubernetes experts do you want to need? I remember I was in a meeting and we're running short on time, but the gist of it was the gentleman leaned over across the table and said, look, man, I don't want to hire a bunch of CCIs to run this. I want to hire a bunch of college students or high school students that are really good at video games. That's what I want to buy. So if you're deploying something in a Kubernetes cluster, you don't want it to look like Kubernetes. You don't want to have to be looking at worker nodes, pods, namespaces. You don't want to have to taint things. You want it to speak in the language that your people understand of the service, right? What you're going to want to do is say, I want to deploy this service. I want to have so many copies. If not automatically done for me, I want this many CPUs. I want this storage creation. And by the way, it's 5G. A lot of 5G network functions use Kafka to distribute messages between multiple 5G functions to keep them synchronized. So you know what? I want to click the Kafka button and make sure that Kafka is deployed first. None of that was with Kubernetes. And if you can stay out of the realm of, and you can make it more declarative on a service level, then it makes it easier to model and update things and do things automatically, because you're asking truly at the highest level, what do I need? Instead of asking someone to hunt through the network, to look at every little CPU ID, virtual function ID, every piece of network, every network address. We need to make things easier, or everything we're doing across the board isn't going to make it. So if I want to summarize the things that we talk about, we want to remember that we can do this today. We want to think about how everything is connected. It's important that everybody that you work with views themselves as an integrator, and we take this holistic view of how do operations dovetail with connectivity. How does that dovetail into services? When we're looking at how we choose things, don't ask for tick boxes. Make people explain to you in detail why things are better. Interoperability has much more to do than just our RAN protocols. It has to do with how we do things operationally. And if we don't plan for multi-tenancy, we're going to have a big problem collecting our data and using it in a reasonable way. Last but not least, it all needs to be easy. Thank you.